Welcome gobs back to another video. If you're not a gob, subscribe so you can become a gob today and you get to roam around in the Goblin Cave with all the other gobs. We're close to 100 subscribers. I don't think I have anything planned for 100 subscribers because to me subscriber goals kind of feels like ancient primordial YouTube, and now we're kind of in this new age where people just get subscribers. I mean, obviously if you get like, I don't know, 100,000, a million, or even for me, I probably do like 1,000. But anyways, we're getting close there. So if you enjoy tabletop and video game RPG content, I talk about it, I review them, and I even play them on the channel. I currently have a Final Fantasy series that I'm doing right now. I'm playing through all the Final Fantasies, all the main entries besides 11 and 14. I say this even in that series, but they'll get their own series. But I'm currently doing that on the channel while uploading like RPG horror stories and whatnot. So if that interests you, go ahead and subscribe. But today's video is something a bit different. It's not the start of a series, but it's more like, again, I'm just talking about TTRPG content, and this keeps popping up in my YouTube inspiration on the YouTube Studio app. Why not capitalize on it right now? Because people are looking it up, or at least they were looking it up. So whatever, but a lot of people have been looking up at the second TTRPG I'm talking about today, but for the most part, I want to go over, not technically review. I guess it is a review, but normally with my reviews, I would hand out gold coins and all that jazz, but for this, I'd rather just like show you guys. But today, I will be talking about the two anime RPGs based on anime shows. I have more than just these two, but these are specifically based on animes that I have both watched, and I own the physical books. And since they're kind of like not well known, I would imagine, you can buy them on Amazon, not sponsored. I can't find like an online PDF for them. I think you could buy it, but I don't want to buy it since I have the physical book. So everything I'll be showing you today will be pictures, really crappy pictures, but they're pictures nonetheless, taken from the book, so to give you something, something to let you guys look at. I'm sure I'll go record some other game for in between. For the most part, I will be somewhat breaking down these TTRPGs for you and giving you my history about them, because I've played one and I haven't played the other, but I technically read it. I'll get into it, but for the most part, today I will be talking about anime TTRPGs based on actual animes. Now with this, I wanted to give a little bit about TTRPG in Japan, because compared to Western, we do things differently. Obviously, it's a different culture, but over there, they prefer two different types of systems from what I've seen. This is all by ear. I haven't gone and done like actual research or anything, but this is sort of from playing over the years what I've picked up. Japanese TTRPGs tend to be based on 2d6, which a lot of their systems are. I have 3 Japanese or Japanese-inspired books, and all 3 of them are 2d6. And today's systems are also 2d6. So it's 2d6 is a very common thing in Japanese TTRPGs, so don't be caught off guard by that. Now we do have Western TTRPGs that do use 2d6, or at least a mixture of 2D different dice, and snake eyes is a fumble, and matching the numbers on the dice is a crit success usually. So, but I can't speak for every single RPG, but the main Western ones, D&D 5e, Pathfinder, even not Cyberpunk Red. Cyberpunk's a D10, but the main one is D20. There are a lot of systems that primarily use D20, but again, there's all these little TTRPGs that have to have their little special dice. They have to roll differently. Whatever. I'm going on some sort of weird tangent. But from what I've seen, Japan also prefers D100, which SMT3, which is a system we've played recently in my group of friends. We've played SMT3 Tabletop Tokyo Conception, but that is a D100, and it's kind of similar to Call of Cthulhu, which I heard it's also really big in Japan. They tend to love their D100 systems, and the SMT Tokyo Conception also uses that D100. So that was just, I'm not going to go into the history and all that, but that's just a little bit thing if you're off put by the weird dice that I say, or because today I'm going to say 2d6 system. So normally you roll 2 6-sided dice, sometimes you get more dice added to it, or you get more added to the check, you know, standard TTRPG stuff. So with that out of the way, let's get into today's anime TTRPGs based on anime. Have I done this title again? I don't know. You guys should expect this by now. If this is your first video you're seeing of me, I'm kind of scatterbrained. I'm all over the place. I tend to do these without scripts, and even if I do have a script, I veer off from the scripts. I mess up a lot. I'll double talk and all sorts of little things. This intro is taking forever. Let's just get into today's video. Starting off with Konosaba. See right there, that's playing the video of me recording of slamming the book on my goblin playmat. That's where that goes right there. With my beautiful, beautiful goddess. I will have no aqua slander in the comments down below. But our first TTRPG is Konosaba. Why did I say it like that? So for those who don't know anything about the Konosaba anime, here's a short little description about it. It's an isekai anime that kind of parodies the genre. To me, it's very funny. So it's more of like, it's not trying to take itself seriously. It does have some serious moments, but for the most part, it's a comedy isekai that parodies the genre. It's about this guy, Kazuma. He teams up with a bunch of, not useless, unique characters, and they form a team and they get into all sorts of hijinks. The TTRPG is based on the world of Konosaba. I'll get more into the lore later, but just know it's an isekai anime that parodies the genre itself. It came out in 2013, the manga did, and the anime was released in 2016. Like I said previously, I like Konosaba. I think Aqua's the best. Again, no Aqua slander. I don't care. I like comments. At any point, if you feel you want to comment, go ahead and comment. I'm not going to bash you or anything. I enjoy comments, okay? We get that, what is it called? That publicity up or something. I don't know. But Konosaba, the TTRPG, was released in 2021 in English, which the adaptation was made by FEAR. I tried to look into them, but I didn't find any other TTRPG made by them. I'm just assuming this is their first time, or was their first time translating something, but I picked up the book around there. I seen the anime years before. I saw it. It was very cheap. I'm like, I'll just grab it, read through it. We might play a game or like a one-shot here and there and see how it goes. So let's go, and I'm going to explain to you how I'm going to break them down. And it's not really a review system. I guess you can throw it under review system, but I'm going to break it down from character creation / compendium. So character creation's obvious, how well is the character creation, how much hand do you have in your character creation, and how fast or simple it is. And it even looks at the character sheet itself and makes sure the character sheet's easy to understand or easy to read. I think most character sheets are fairly simple. I was put off by Pathfinder 2E's character sheet, but once you learn about the system, then you look at it and you're like, oh, okay, yeah, that's really simple. But that's the main thing. And then the compendium is how much items are available to the player, if any. Sometimes these books, they talk about items and then they just don't have anything available for the players. The compendium is also items that the GM can use. For example, in D&D, we have all the shops, all the tools. I don't think they have any magic items, but they have daily expenses. So that's what this section is looking how much is available for the players. Then next we have the organization / art style of the book. Does the book look good? Is the book neatly organized? Are you having to bounce around between different sections? Or is everything where it should be? Then we have the actual rules and mechanics. I'm not going to go over every single tiny rule, but I will point out everything that's unique about the system. Because most TTRPGs, they kinda carry in between. I mean, most of them, you have checks, you roll a dice against a TN. That's pretty standard. So I'm just going to go pick out the unique rules and some of the general rules. Then we have the setting / genre of the book. This one's going to be fairly simple. It's just how well does the book capture its setting? Like, how much lore does it give you? How much of the genre does it explain to you? And does the book capture the genre it's trying to portray fairly well? And then lastly, we have the GM resources. How much is available to the GM? This is anywhere from lore to just telling you GM tricks to making your own NPCs. You know, how much do they offer the GM to make these adventures, or do they even offer anything at all? So that's how I'm going to break down everything today. So I'm just going to go, it's A, B, C, D, E, and then anything else is just extra little tidbits. So let's get into Konosaba, the TTRPG. Now, as you notice, this book it's not the thinnest, but it is paperback, which kind of sucks. I prefer hardback RPG books. They just feel more official. But there's nothing wrong with paperback. In fact, one of my favorite systems is paperback, Fabula Ultima. I enjoy that system very well, and it is paperback itself, so there's nothing wrong with it being paperback. I just like hardback books. But let's start off with our character creation and compendium for Konosaba. Character creation is straightforward once you get past the wonky setup. For example, the character sheets in the book look different from the actual character sheets. The stats are like misaligned in like the first page, but for the most part everything lines up. But you can use the pre-gen characters in the book to kind of help you understand where everything needs to go. Now, I don't remember exactly how to calculate everything, but you should understand that Japanese TTRPGs tend to be a bit crunchy. They love their crunchy numbers. They also love they love their heavy narrative, especially traveling. I see traveling's a big part in Japanese TTRPGs, but just know they love their numbers. I'm not going to break down this character sheet because that's not really what this is really for, but you can see the stats on the screen because these aren't in-depth details. These are just showing you what's up. This isn't going to teach you how to play Konosaba. This is just like, hey, look at this and see if you like it, because especially if you've seen the Konosaba anime, you might be like, oh, that might be fun to play. But don't knock these out just because you haven't seen the anime. You can always get these. If you love these crunchier systems, then these books might be perfect for you. So let's continue on with character creation. So there's set stats. You don't roll for stats, but you do pick a race, and then that race will have set stats. So there's Isekai. You can play as an Isekai character. You can roll how you died, or you can come up with it by yourself. With everything else in here, you can roll for your background, pick it, or just come up with it yourself. So Isekai, which is pretty general, it's all-rounder. Then you have natural inhabitant of the Konosaba world. I forgot what it's called. I think it's called creation. I don't remember what the world is called, but you're an inhabitant of that world. So you're like a dwarf, an elf, whatever races are available, even a human. They tend to be more martial. I think they're a bit more martial. Crimson Demon Clan, which are more, well, magic than the other races if you have seen Konosaba. So you pick your race, pink. You go through and you can pick either one class to pick all your skills from, or you take the adventurer class, which lets you take multiple skills either from one class, or you can take one from each class as long as you meet whatever prerequisites are in there. You can't take it from the leveled up classes in the back of the book, but you can take it from all the general classes in the beginning of the book. So you can make a mix and match character. You just don't get I think you get initial benefits whenever you pick a class. You just don't get those benefits. But each class offers a variety of skills to pick from. And as far as equipment restrictions, there are no equipment restrictions for weapons. So you can use a weapon on any class, from what I remember. You can, obviously, classes are going to gravitate towards certain weapons. Martials are going to gravitate towards swords or large swords, and then magic users are going to gravitate towards the staves because they help with MP or your magic check or what have you. The only thing that is restricted by class is the actual equipment and that you can put on. So in the equipment page, you have the armor. It lists what class can wield it. That's it for the items you can put on the class. So once you pick your race, you pick your class. Your class provides another bonus. So your race provides base stats. Your class provides pluses to those base stats. So your base stat, that's how many dice you roll is based off your base stat, and then whatever bonus you get from your class is the thing you get towards the check, I think. Again, I'm not here to break it down, but it's either something like that, vice versa. One determines how many dice you roll, and then the other determines the bonus you get towards your initial check. But besides how weird the character sheet is, the character creation is pretty fun. You can even pick cheats based on characters from the show, such as Megumin's Explode or Kazuma's ability to cheat death. And then, whenever you level up, you can change classes to a different class. So you get like 2 skill points or you get 1 skill, but you can go and pick a different class. Of course, whatever class will change your bonus to your stats, but you keep all the skills from your previous class. So as you leveling up through the guild, you start to make this mismatched character of abilities that kind of work together, or just offers your character to be really versatile based on what route you want to go with them. And then once you get a class to level 10, there's 4 beginner classes. It's the warrior, the thief, a priest, and a wizard. But then you can go and you get like knight, archpriest, archwizard, and then ninja. I forget what the thief is called, but there's upgraded classes once you get a character to level 10. And then you can take on boost classes, and they are providing way better abilities. But for character creation and continuum, that's it. There's not too many items aside from equipment to pick. There's like potions, food, jewelry you can take. There's few accessories such as a lockpicking kit or a tome or something. And then you get your guild card and then camping and traveling gear. But it's all like on one page. And then you have like your social services. Then you have your services, like lodging plays a very big part. At the end of your session, you pay for what kind of room you want. If you pay for a really crappy room, your stats are hurt. And then if you pay for a really good room, then your stats are buffed for the next day. All in all, there's a lot of stuff for the players to work with here. You can spend tons of time picking out so many different skills and what kind of priest you want to be, because not every priest will play the same. And not every wizard will have the same spells. And then even aside from that, you get general skills, which have like fishing and hunting. And there's all sorts of skills to make such variety of characters. So the character creation and items are all fairly good. This next section is not too long, but we're talking about the design and the layout of the book. The book is neatly designed. It tells you everything in order. You have all your character creation in one spot. You have all your rules in one spot, then you have your compendium, and then everything is neatly organized. You don't have to flip back and forth between the book. You can see I have those tabs that flip me right straight to the book, and all of them I think make fairly sense going in order. There's nothing that's seems out of place. And the art style is very cute, and I think it captures the original anime fairly well. I don't think it's the manga artist or someone who's worked on it, I think. The manga artist did play a TTRPG session, which you can read throughout the book, of him playing in that session, or running that session. He did have somewhat of his hand on it. Obviously, I don't know how much control the original manga artist has over the IP, but he does know of its existence, and he has played in it, so. Now let's talk about rules and mechanics. It's a 2d6 system, but your classes and choices can provide pretty good buff to pass checks. Aside from that, like I said, all of that in character creation. You get dice to roll. The GM can give you advantage or disadvantage, which you roll another d6. You only fumble if both dice come up as snake eyes. The more dice you roll, you only fumble if all dice come up as 1. So if you get snake eyes and you rolled a third dice, and that dice is a 2, then you don't fumble. But you do crit if 2 of the dices come up as 6s. So 2 or more 6s means you crit, regardless of whatever the third or fourth dice is. But aside from that, there's standard TTRPG sub. You can stealth and climb and make all sorts of skill checks, detect traps, disarm traps, and all that good stuff from D&D or whatever. It's standard TTRPG stuff if you played it. I probably wouldn't recommend this for new players, but that doesn't matter. You can still play it as a new player. The only thing that sets it aside is the combat. Now, combat looks like a slog at first. I mean, look at this page. Look at all that stuff you gotta check. But once you start doing the combat, you can skip over it. This is merely to check to see if somebody wants to activate a skill, either friendly or player. And it's kind of like Magic the Gathering. If you ever played that, you run through the phases. But eventually, you don't have to sit there and go untap, upkeep, draw, first phase, moving to combat. You don't have to sit there and name every single phase. So the same thing is similar here. The players should know what skills they want to activate. So if they have a skill that activates at a certain phase, then they should have that ready or be thinking about readying that up. But everyone rolls initiative. DM marks it down. Then we go to the top of the round. You go through the initiative order. Players have to do specific things. So you have a move phase, then you have your action phase, and then you have your cleanup step or whatever. So you just move through. You can see the page, but you just move through these phases, and you're just checking to see if anybody would like to activate these skills. And then once that person goes, you reset it back to the top of the move phase and action phase and whatever. I say that too much. But you get the idea. You're moving through these phases, and you can kind of just skip it. The main thing about combat, but aside from that, the main thing is instead of tracking movement speed, as such as playing on a grid or a hexagonal map, so you still have a map, and you place your characters down, but instead of tracking exact movement, it's rather more narrative, I would say, because all you're simply doing is you move someplace and then the DM will tell you if you're engaged in melee. The DM will draw a circle around on the map. If they do that, then you are currently engaged with that enemy, which means whenever you're engaged, you can use melee against that opponent. So if you're a melee fighter, you will often end up engagements. You can also leave an engagement or attempt to leave an engagement. You can always take an action to disengage out of the engagement, or just roll with chance and try to escape using your movement. However, if an enemy is engaged with a friendly can move in and out of that space unless it's a closed space. But as long as it's open, friendlies can move in and out of engagements as long as there is a friendly within that engagement. Now, what else can engagements do? You also determine it if you can use ranged or not. You can't use ranged weapons when you're engaged. You can only use ranged weapons outside of an engagement. You can fire into an engagement. And then magic, I think you can use it wherever you want. It doesn't matter if you're engaged or not. Depending on the magic, that's always a rule. Items and spells override general rules. But that's it for engagement. I thought engagements were fairly cool. I really enjoy, drawing the circle and then having them try to move out of the circle or putting them in tight spaces. But aside from engagement, everything else is pretty standard. You roll your attack checks versus a dodge check or the dodge TN of the monster, depending on what you're attacking. You do have to make magic checks, but as long as you don't get snake eyes on the check, then you're fine. That's all it's checking. If you get snake eyes or a crit fumble, then the spell fizzles and your resources are lost. But aside from that, you make a magic check to see if you can cast a spell, and then I think the enemies have to make a defense check to see if they can not be affected by the spells. All in all, the rules look pretty complex, but once you sit down and read it, you're like, oh, that's really not complex at all. And I think that's true for most TTRPGs, as long as you don't play Pathfinder. Pathfinder 2e, that system's fairly complex, but like I said for Pathfinder 2e, once everybody agrees on it and everybody reads the rules, then it's not really that complex. But here, you can pretty much read the rules and understand, oh yeah, this is how it works. Self is a bit weird, but everything else is fairly simple. I did have a bit of a hard time reading the trap disarm or the trap check rules, but then I just read it a couple more times and then I understood. Let's move on to setting and genre. They give you a big old chapter about the starting town and the world itself and the goddesses, and well, what's more to it? It's a Konosaba TTRPG and the genre is Konosaba. It's a fantasy adventure and it captures the genre pretty well. In fact, while you're playing, it kind of feels like you're playing out through a Konosaba episode. At least the way I planned it. The way I planned it was fairly fun, and it was all sorts of hijinks. I mean, my party defeated the final boss with a flex off. That's with any TTRPG, it's as fun as you want to make it, but here you can really just let loose and have fun. If you ignore that you die instantly, if you fail even one death save when you drop to 0 HP, yeah, I mean, it's pretty brutal, but, I don't think there's any resurrection spells. I think there's one resurrection spell that Archpriest gets, but no one's going to be an Archpriest for a while when you start out the game. And I'm sure you could always throw in a chapel to let the adventurer or whatever get res, but for the most part, drop to 0 HP, you make your death save, fail one, you die instantly. Of course, you can always change the rules to make it easier. That's about it for the setting and genre of the Konosaba. You can either watch the show and understand the lore, or just read a little segment in the back of the book. So let's move on to our final thing, which is probably, sadly, the worst thing about the Konosaba TTRPG, and that is the GM resources. They give you quest ideas, how much you rewarded and XP you should give out. They give you common monsters such as goblins and wolves and bandits, and then they sprinkle in some bosses. Besides that, they don't tell you how to make your own, so you're kind of just left homebrewing whatever, or you could always reskin a monster, because they do have a lot of common monsters. And aside from that, homebrewing seemed pretty complex for me. Although I think I could do it. If I played the system a couple more times, I think I could get it down pat. But for the most part, compared to the players, the GM gets like little to nothing. Which isn't the biggest deal in the world, but there are no supplements or anything for the system. So that hurts the system pretty well. So if you're expecting a lot of GM resources, be ready to get creative and homebrew. Overall, I think Konosuba is a fairly fun, and I would like to say it's a simple system. Again, once you get over that hurdle of complexity, crunchy, if that's what it is, then I think it starts to go down. I think, or uphill, downhill. I said that in the other one. But it starts to go uphill, and it really is just a simple system for you for your round. Especially if everyone in your group, or for me, it was like half the people in my group have seen the show. I know me and a friend has seen it, and then the other two were on episode 1, and one person had never seen it. And they still, the people who hadn't seen the show had a really good time, and the people who had seen it had a really great time. And it was all fairly well, because I separated from the show. Don't try to run it like the show verbatim. Don't try to make them Kazuma and Megumin or whatever. Don't try to make them as characters in the show. Make it a separate thing that just so happens in the world. You don't even have to make those characters show up. The only thing that's similar is the town name. That's just a little GM tidbit for any anime TTRPG or any TTRPG based on a show or something. Don't make it like whatever the show is based on. The game should do that naturally. So just make it like a regular old adventure. And for this one, I made like a comedic / serious adventure. They had a really horrible time because no one decided to take magic, so they had to fight a bunch of ghosts, and ghosts are resistant to physical. But that's aside it. I love Konosuba. I think I gave it an A rank, so it's below S rank in my initial TTRPG review video, which you can find here in the card. I should make a mental note of this, because I always say I'm going to put stuff in the cards, and I never do. That's it for the Konosuba RPG. Great for players. GMs, get ready to be creative. We are moving on to, well, that was technically me. Why did that take so long? I'm looking at the recording. It took me so long. Why? How did I yap for that long? I think there's a lot of mess-ups and a lot of pauses, so hopefully it's a lot shorter. We're moving on to our next TTRPG based off of an anime. And this one, well, it might come as a surprise to you guys. But, well, maybe not. You've probably seen it in the thumbnail or something. Or you could probably just guess. But, yeah, let's get into it. Because our next anime TTRPG is Goblin Slayer. Yeah, type it up. Type up those jokes. Type up the irony. Type it all up. But I like Goblin Slayer. Okay, I watched the first season. I haven't watched the second season. And I really enjoyed the first season. Skip episode 1. Skip episode 1. Don't watch episode 1, or at least skip halfway through episode 1. Just don't watch it. I get it, they want to instill the hatred for the goblins of that universe, but they really didn't need to do that. They could have just cut it halfway through, okay? We don't need to see all that. Does that say something about the manga artists, or at least the animators? But anyways, let me go bring up the Goblin Slayer. The Goblin Slayer manga was originally released in Japan on February 15th, 2016, and would go on to be released in English in December 20th, 2016, so same year. And then eventually it will get an anime release in 2018. Goblin Slayer is a Japanese dark fantasy light novel. Okay, you'll never guess what it's based on. It's based on this guy here slaying goblins, and that's the anime. He goes around and he slays goblins. He encounters an elf, a dwarf, and a beastkin, dragonkin, beastkin. But he forms a team with them, and then they go around and slay goblins and some other creatures. Not all goblins. It's not all slaying goblins. But if you go into Goblin Slayer expecting him to slay something other than goblins, then why are you watching a show called Goblin Slayer? But we're talking about the TTRPG. Looking at the size of the Konosuba TTRPG, surely it's not that big. Oh man. this one's going to be a doozy, isn't it? Well, I'm not going to go over every single thing in the book. I'm still going to hold it to that system. So let's look at character creation. Now, for this one, I didn't exactly write the notes down. You guys will never hear that, and you guys will never hear that. That's what's going to take this forever. With most TTRPGs, the first thing I start at is the character sheet. Holy oh my. Yeah, this one's a doozy, guys. If you want super crunchy, this TTRPG system, I haven't played it. We never played a session 1, but it is crunchy. From the looks of it, from reading the rules, all of it's super crunchy. I mean, look at this attrition track, which is cool, mind you, but still, that's a lot to track. Now again, with the Konosuba one, I'm not going to go through, I'm not going to break down every single stat. I'm not going to do all of that. We're just going to go over character creation. So here's everything that you do in character creation. First, you choose from one of the 4 races. There are 5 basic races that you can pick from. A lot of them being standard fantasy, such as humans, dwarves, elves, rayas, which are technically halflings if you've ever played D&D, and then we have lizardmen. And that's all the races that you can pick from. Humans are all-rounders, standard movement. Dwarves are tougher with low movement. Lizardmen tend to be more religious casters, I guess. Well, elves tend to be more magic or whatever caster. Elves are wizards. Lizardmen are usually priests. And then we have Rayas, which are halflings, which also tend to be a bit magical. And that is all the races. Editor Gob out. For this one, you can either pick the fixed scores, or the GM will tell you to use the fixed score, or you can choose to roll. Guys, always pick the fixed. It's better for everyone to be on an even playing ground than for someone to be super overpowered and someone to be super underweaked. Oh, I'll make a video about rolling for stats. Trust me, there will be a gob rant someday about it. So, after that, you determine your, primary and secondary ability scores. And then you determine a history, which you can either roll on the table or make up yourself. But the history is important. You guys definitely don't hear me flipping through the book right now. So once you pick a race, or if you decide to be a half race, you pick from one or the other. You roll off this table, or you can select it. No, I think you do have to roll off it, but cool DMs let you select it. You see whoever raised you, you see what class they have, and this influences what class you get, or what skills you get. For example, an adventurer can get 1 level of any class, while a soldier gets 1 level of scout, and they get the 6th sense adventurer skill. Then, after determining your origin, you determine a past, which also gets you another skill. So, for example, you could have participated in a war and you get the cool and collective skill, or you could have been destitute and you get the survivalism skill. And then lastly, you determine an encounter, and this is essentially an NPC that is important to you. It's a connection to your character, or it could even be a motivation. And then you get to add a bonus point to a primary ability score. Then you have to write down your status. For this one, you have to roll 2d6, or if your GM lets you, you can take 5, 7, and 9. And you can decide this before or after you've rolled your 2d6. This is the only time I'll allow that you have to roll for it. Okay, it can be kind of fun to roll high and get better spells, but this, only for this system. What are these determines? You put them towards your life force, which determines your HP, or not really your HP. Yeah, it's your HP, but it's more for determining how many wounds you can sustain before you start really feeling it. And then you determine your movement speed, and then how many spell uses. 2 to 6, you have 0 spell uses. 7 to 9, you get 1 spell uses. 10 through 11 is 2, and then 12 is 3. Now you might be wondering, is that really the amount of spells you can cast in a day? Yes, that is the amount of spells you can cast in a day. Luckily, there's a skill that lets you get more uses out of your spells, but for the most part, if you don't take those skills, that's how many spells. You get 1 spell a day, then you get 3,000 experience points to put between classes. I think it's 1,000 to acquire a class and 1,500 to acquire a level 2 in that class. And you track each level of class separately. There are so many classes to pick from. I'm not going to name them all, but you can mix and match these classes. Each one has a specific amount of equipment they can wield, which wielding weapons doesn't provide. It doesn't provide a bonus, but there's no disadvantage, while wielding the incorrect armor will make you unable to cast spells. So definitely check your equipment and make sure you're properly wearing what you need to. And then you get money to spend on equipment. After you get your experience points, your class, then you go get skills and spells. You have to take skills, but spells, you know, if you want spells, then you can go and pick what spell you want. Which I gotta say, the magic in here is fairly powerful. So there's a reason you only get one use a day, but the one spell you get can be really strong, because the higher you roll on your dice, on your 2d6 or however many dice you roll, the more damage that spell will do. At the bottom of the character sheet, there's like a reminder, like based on how high you roll affects how much damage you do with an attack or how much damage you do with a spell. Then you purchase your equipment and possessions, and then finally you determine your profile. Lastly, that's the final thing you do, which you decide your name, age, gender, rank, adventures completed, and physical traits to your character. Of course, most GMs will start you out at level 1 and no adventurers, so which level 1 is called porcelain. Oh, isn't that nifty? There's rules for creating high level characters, and then I gotta say the compendium is pretty big. There's lots of spells, there's tons of skills you could see here. This section right here is nothing but spells, skills, and items for the players, and I'm not going over this. But, you know, the standard stuff, swords, shields, you can only wield one in one hand, one in the other. There's even guns you can buy. If you have a ranged weapon, you have to take ammunition for it. So, overall, there is a lot of stuff for the players to pick from. You can, again, like Konosaba, you can really make a diverse character and all sorts of history too. Even the history, you know, how your parents raised you can also have an effect on how your character turns out. So with that, let's move on to the organization and art style. Now it starts off with how to create your character, and then it tells you the rules, and then it tells you the spells and skills, and then everything else is for the GM. But overall, it's not organized that bad. That's just a bit weird. I would put the spells and skills after character creation. And then as far as art style, there's not really too many pictures. There's only, well, you got the cover, you got the beginning of the chapter here, and then another at the beginning of a chapter later on. That's it for the artwork. So I like the artworks. I think they look fine. There's just little to none. You know, I like it when a book shows you, like, even if it's a sword, I like it when they show you what the equipment looks like. It adds more to, like, if people aren't super imaginative, it allows those people to see it better in their head and allows them to get more immersed. So that's it. Let's talk about the rules and mechanics. Once again, it's a 2d6. Now, if you look on the sheet, you might see right here, you'll see that the weapon attack has 4 classes. And originally we thought you added up all the classes. No, you choose one class to get a bonus from. You pick that class, and then you get a bonus to hit using that class's ability. So you don't add up like 2 plus 1 plus 1. You add up the 2 or the 1 or the other 1. So it's a weird thing. From reading the rules were rather simple. Again, you're just rolling against TNs, and spells will have their own mechanics. I didn't dive too hard into the rules. Not that there's a whole lot of rules. Combat's a bit weird. You don't track combat to a T. It's more the GM tracks how far away you are from an enemy. Now, one thing I will say, you do have movement, but if you use your full movement, you get actually disadvantages for how much you move in your turn. So if you move a little bit and make a melee attack, there's no disadvantage. If you move half your speed, then make a melee, then I think there's no disadvantage, but range attacks take a -4. And then if you move your full speed, then melee, it's a -4, and then a -8 for range attacks. And then if you move anywhere past that, you just can't make range attacks, and then you make melees at -8. That's a bit weird. Obviously, let's talk about the attrition track. So it looks a bit weird, and I definitely had to reread the rules a couple of times to fully get it. But essentially, whenever you take damage, you reduce it by your armor and by your block check. So the attacker will make an attack check, then you make a block or parry check, or you just straight up take the damage. Once you do that, you determine how much damage you take, reduce it by your armor, and then you mark your wounds. If your wounds ever equal past your life force, then you start marking 2 stamina at the end of each round. So at the end of the round, after everyone has taken their turn, everyone marks 1 mark on the attrition track. Then if you mark a spiky box, you mark a fatigue. So you just fill up that attrition track until eventually you keep hitting these spiky balls. And as you can see, there's more spiky balls as you go on. And to clear this, you need to rest or heal up. Healing doesn't get rid of it, but to clear your attrition, you have to actually spend some downtime to rest. So battles can be very taxing. If you've ever played D&D, you know how long battles can go. So seeing this might really scare you, but I kind of like it. It kind of adds like, oh, we have to kill these guys now, or we're going to die of fatigue eventually, or not be able to hit anything and be put into a vulnerable position. There is no SA, don't worry. There is no SA in the book. Don't worry, it's not that type of game. But that's the biggest thing about attrition. And then everything else, you know, I talked about what you add to your rolls. Your equipment can add more to your rolls. There's all the skills you can take. I'm not going to go over every single skills, but there's skills for like dual wielding, for aiming, for hitting multiple targets. It kind of reminds me of Pathfinder 2e abilities, except instead of skills, and they level up from beginner, intermediate. Each level gives you a higher rank, which strengthens that effect of whatever you level up. All in all, this system can be super crunchy and super deadly. So if you're looking for a more hardcore kind of isk book, then this will be the book for you. And that's all I'm going to talk about the rules and mechanics. Let's move on to the setting and genre. And we see here we have an entire short novel of the actual book with some artwork in there. There's that. I think if I were to play this, or if my group were to play this, I think it would fairly capture the setting pretty well. It is a dark fantasy, and with it being brutal and the fatigue and all that, I think it would capture the setting that it was Goblin Slayer was originally meant for. Of course, you can always circumvent this by making a comedic thing, or if your play group is just more unserious. Mine tends to be unserious, so even if it was a super serious system, it would still be pretty funny. So all in all, I think it captures it pretty well. As far as GM resources go, well, I think it's kind of like Konosuba. They don't really give you how to create your own monsters, but they do give you a lot of monsters. There is a large amount of monsters to pick from, so much more than Konosuba. So that is really nice. You can see me flipping through all of these, and so you do more than just slay goblins, okay? And then of course you can always homebrew it. I think homebrew is fairly simple for this, because if you're worrying about, oh, do I have to track stamina for monsters? Nope, you don't have to track it for them. You do have to make morale check for minions, but for the most part, you don't have to worry about tracking all that attrition for monsters. I think the GM resources are again fairly right, and with this system not being well known, there's no supplements or anything for it. But even then, I do enjoy the large amount of monsters in the back of the book, so if you can really create a large amount of adventures. And again, there's nothing wrong with reusing things or reskinning monsters into something else. All in all, I think Goblin Slayer TTRPG, if you're a fan of dark fantasy, super crunchy systems, then this system is going to be very good for your group. Even if you haven't seen the show, I feel like this book would be fairly great for those types. Because I don't think people who have seen the show would want to play this. Now, I think people who've seen Konosuba would definitely give Konosuba a try. Like, even if the character sheet's a bit weird. I can't see, not light fans, but people who just seen the show, they like it, or whatever. I can't see them really getting into it. You really gotta be hardcore. I mean, I appreciate that for such a, not a niche anime, but for not a well-known anime, that besides, you know, the shock value of the first episode, but it's such a big book. Such a big book. I really appreciate that. That means they really went through and explained a lot of things in detail. So for a rules lawyer like me, if that's what you want to call it, it's fairly nice. But man, that is a lot of rules. I recommend typing up some reference sheets for your players. And that'll be it, guys. That is my Konosuba Goblin Slayer TTRPG review. Again, not really a review. I did give my little tidbits on it. If you want to see where I placed them, go ahead and go watch that TTRPG review tier list that I did way forever ago. But there you go, YouTube. You can finally stop recommending me to talk about the Goblin Slayer TTRPG. I talked about it. There it is. That's what you guys want, right? That's what you wanted, right? If you have made it this far, thank you for watching. Thank you, thank you, thank you. If there's anything you liked about these systems or you're a bit confused about, leave a comment down below and I'll try to answer the comments as best as I can. This book doesn't belong to me. I'm borrowing it from my friend and I would like to return it to him. But for the most part, if you have any sort of questions about the systems, let me know and I'll try to answer them to the best of my ability in the comments. And now it's time for my social media plugins. If you have a Twitter, I do have a Twitter. Well, I share my videos, my recently uploaded videos, so you can go ahead and follow me there. And then I have a Reddit where I also do the same thing, except on the Reddit you can create posts that I'll see. So if you ever want to send me a meme or video or an RPG horror story or something of the sort, then go ahead and send it to me there. I know a lot of people don't use Reddit or like Reddit. I don't know. Reddit's never really bothered me, but if you use that platform and you enjoy my content or you want to see more of me, then go ahead and follow me there. And that will do it for my social medias. So if you enjoyed the video, give it a like. Once again, if you like TTRPG content or if you like video game RPG content such as talking and reviewing, then go ahead and subscribe so you can see more of my beautiful character. Look how green and succulent I am, I guess. Oh man, this video was way longer than I intended it to be, so I hope you gobs have a lop of a day, and I hope your adventures continue to be great.